A dramatic escalation in the U.S.-Iran conflict occurred today, marked by new military strikes following the deaths of two American service members. With tensions skyrocketing, what does this mean for the future of the Middle East and global stability? The immediate future is fraught with the risk of further U.S. military escalation in the ongoing tensions with Iran. Recent developments suggest that the U.S. may launch targeted strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, an action that would significantly heighten hostilities. Experts warn that such strikes could provoke a severe backlash from Iran, potentially leading to retaliatory actions against U.S. interests in the region. President Trump has also proposed incorporating Iran into the Russian sanctions bill, a move that could further isolate the nation economically and politically. This strategy could exacerbate Iran's already strained economy, leading to increased internal dissent and desperation among its populace. The recent delivery of additional U.S. refueling aircraft to Israel signals a potential expansion of military operations against Iran, raising fears of an imminent conflict. In the global oil market, concerns over possible disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz are already causing volatility. This strategic waterway handles approximately 20% of the world's oil supply, making it vital for global energy security. Should Iran retaliate with missile attacks on U.S. bases or allied nations, the conflict could escalate into a full-scale regional war involving multiple Middle Eastern powers, including Saudi Arabia and Hezbollah. The repercussions of such a conflict would be catastrophic, not only for the region, but also for global energy markets, with prices likely to rise dramatically. As we stand on the brink of potential military confrontation, the question remains, how far will the U.S. and Iran go in their conflict? In the coming weeks, diplomatic efforts may intensify as nations seek to de-escalate tensions. However, the path forward remains uncertain, with critical negotiations likely to shape the geopolitical landscape in the near future. The current escalation of U.S.-Iran tensions has deep historical roots that date back decades, intensifying recently after a failed interim agreement aimed at establishing lasting peace. The complexities of these relations can be traced back to the 1979 Iranian Revolution, a pivotal moment that resulted in the U.S. losing a critical ally in the Middle East. Since then, Iran has pursued a more assertive regional policy, increasingly aggressive toward U.S. troops stationed in Jordan. This trend is particularly alarming, especially as regional allies have restricted U.S. military access to their bases, complicating American strategy and diminishing its influence in the region. In response to Iran's provocations, the U.S. initiated a naval blockade intended to restrict Iranian oil shipments, a move that has disrupted global oil flows and heightened geopolitical risks. The implications of this blockade extend beyond the immediate conflict, drawing the attention of other global powers and raising the stakes involved. Notably, the Vatican and U.S. presidency have publicly clashed over differing diplomatic strategies, signaling a fracture in traditional alliances that could further complicate negotiations. Moreover, Hungary's recent political shift may reshape the European Union's approach to the ongoing conflict, potentially influencing member states' positions on U.S.-Iran relations. Simultaneously, humanitarian crises in Nigeria and Haiti expose systemic vulnerabilities that compound global instability, diverting focus from the U.S.-Iran standoff. As both nations continue to exchange hostilities, the likelihood of a diplomatic resolution diminishes. The current trajectory suggests an increasing potential for military confrontation. Urgent and proactive steps are needed from the international community to facilitate negotiations, as failure to address these tensions could lead to dire consequences for both regional stability and global security. A renewed commitment to dialogue is essential to avert an escalation that could engulf the broader Middle East. This escalation signals a potential turning point toward all-out regional war in the Middle East. The U.S. and Iran have now exchanged direct strikes on military assets, a level of engagement that suggests the interim deal meant to end hostilities has crumbled completely. This breakdown of diplomacy is particularly alarming given the historical context of U.S.-Iran relations, which have been fraught with tension since the 1979 Iranian Revolution. The conflict is primarily centered around the Strait of Hormuz, a critical choke point for global oil shipments. Approximately 20% of the world's oil passes through this narrow waterway, making it vital for international trade and economic stability. Disruptions in this area could trigger massive spikes in global oil prices, destabilizing energy markets worldwide. The death of 16 U.S. military personnel represents a dramatic increase in American involvement, signaling a shift in the U.S. stance towards Iran that could further escalate the situation. This heightened military engagement complicates the already delicate security landscape in the Middle East and raises questions about the U.S. commitment to its allies in the region. President Trump's insistence on linking Iran to the sanctions bill against Russia indicates a broader geopolitical strategy aimed at countering Iranian influence throughout the Middle East. The ongoing conflict directly impacts not only the U.S. troops stationed in the region, but also allied nations and global economies that depend on the stability of oil supplies. As oil prices soar, the average person should care deeply about these developments, as they directly affect the cost of fuel and economic stability globally. With inflation already a concern in many countries, rising energy costs could exacerbate economic challenges for consumers and businesses alike. The implications of this conflict could extend beyond military engagement, affecting diplomatic relations and economic ties around the world. As nations grapple with the fallout from this escalation, the international community will need to navigate a complex web of alliances and rivalries. Looking ahead, the potential for a broader conflict looms large, and urgent diplomatic efforts are essential to prevent a full-scale war that could have devastating consequences for millions. The focus must now shift to dialogue and conflict resolution strategies that prioritize regional stability and peace. On July 20, 2026, the U.S.-Iran military conflict escalated significantly following an Iranian attack on a U.S. base in Jordan. This attack resulted in the deaths of 2 American service members and left 1 more missing. The incident marks a critical turning point, as it brings the total number of U.S. military deaths in the ongoing conflict to 16. Just days before, tensions had been surging, with 4 Iranian strikes against U.S. troops in Jordan within a 5-day span, culminating in the deadliest attack on July 20th. The U.S. Central Command swiftly responded by targeting the Iranian forces responsible for these attacks. By July 20th, the U.S. launched new strikes against Iranian infrastructure and military assets, marking a significant escalation in hostilities. This direct exchange of strikes is unprecedented, highlighting a departure from previous limited skirmishes. The backdrop to this conflict includes years of escalating tensions between the U.S. and Iran, particularly following the U.S. withdrawal from the nuclear agreement in 2018. The Iranian regime has increasingly viewed U.S. military presence in the region as a direct threat to its sovereignty. Furthermore, regional dynamics have shifted with Iran's growing influence in neighboring countries, raising alarms in Washington and among its allies. The implications of this escalation are profound. Not only does it threaten the stability of the Middle East, but it also risks drawing in other nations, including Israel, which has already increased its military readiness. President Donald Trump has further intensified the situation by proposing to add Iran to a sanctions bill aimed at Russia, signaling a broader strategy against Iranian aggression. Additionally, Israel is receiving more U.S. refueling aircraft, suggesting it may play a more active role in the conflict as hostilities escalate. Looking ahead, the likelihood of further military engagement appears high, as both nations seem entrenched in their positions. The U.S. aims to deter Iranian aggression, while Iran seeks to assert its influence in the region. With diplomatic channels seemingly closed, the potential for a prolonged conflict looms, raising concerns about regional stability, global oil markets, and international relations. The coming weeks will be crucial in determining if a diplomatic solution can emerge or if the cycle of violence will continue to escalate. As we consider the potential for an all-out war between the U.S. and Iran, what do you think will happen next? Share your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for daily deep dives into major global events.